Hi, Deb Hartman again. This is the Module 2 lecture for Families and Cultural Diversity, following on from the Module 1 lecture. So, in this lecture, we're talking about understanding the cultural context of families and the nature and magnitude of global change. It's full of meaty content from different disciplines in this module, so we've provided readings from a range of journals, some interesting audio materials, and there's only going to be one main assessment item in this module. It's a group project that allows you to work together on the substantial issues raised in the module. So there's three main themes in this module that intersect in a number of interesting and different ways, in ways that are relevant to family studies and to cultural diversity in families. The themes are globalisation, family change, and social change. We're inviting you to read very widely in this module and to use your own experience to interrogate how these themes intersect and which aspects of the different theories you find most compelling and most relevant to your work with families and with diverse families. So we'll start with the idea of globalisation. It's a broad concept and different disciplines and theoretical positions understand it differently. One useful definition defines it as the widening, deepening and speeding up of worldwide interconnectedness in all aspects of contemporary social life, from cultural to criminal, to financial to spiritual. But when this term was first used as a theoretical concept in the 1960s, the focus then was on international economic integration and economic flows from society to society across the globe. Globalisation theorists have focused on large-scale economic changes and the consequences of new forms of global capital, such as the rise of multinational companies that operate across nation-state borders. The ways these forms of international capital may impinge on the ability of national governments to regulate their activities in the interests of their own national economies is of great interest to globalisation theorists who focus on economic relations. Of course, the impact of globalisation on the ability of nation-states to provide social infrastructure and social services for their national population, for families and individuals, is also important here. More recently, though, globalisation theorists have widened their concern to consider the implications for political and social spheres. Particularly, it's been suggested that the rapid change in information technology makes communication across the globe much more immediate and possible for many people. It's argued that changes in communication technology have and are likely to continue to have a democratising effect for social and for interest groups, for families and for individuals, as well as for international capital exchanges. But theorists differ in their analysis of the consequences of globalisation. Some argue globalisation is a broad democratising force, likely to transform power relations and improve conditions for all people. Others see it as a neoliberal trend, more likely to cement or worsen existing inequities or create new ones. Still, other theorists suggest that the consequences are difficult to ascertain and predict, and that globalisation contains possibilities for transformation that are going to be played out in local contexts. And they've got unpredictable outcomes depending on these local situations. Therefore, in this course, we see globalisation may have different effects on different countries with profound consequences for different family, economic and cultural groups, and that's why it's so important as a concept when thinking about families and cultural diversity in different circumstances. So while family studies as a discipline was rather slow to take up theories of globalisation, one area where broader globalisation theories were particularly relevant to family studies was in social and cultural flows across the globe, how globalisation might affect ethnicity, nationality, and our individual social identities. Migration is one of the main ways that globalisation has both affected families and changed the cultural makeup of national populations. Listen to the first episode of Mongrel Nation to get an idea of this in the Australian context. It talks about how the Australian population and Australia's policies on migration have changed dramatically since the Second World War. You might want to do some research of your own on national demographics of Australia or of other countries to see how national demographics have changed over time. Some theorists suggest globalisation has and will have profound implications for changes in family forms, implying that the traditional Western nuclear family or the traditional extended Indian family is disappearing. Yet, there's much debate about this and about the extent to which globalisation has contributed to changes in family forms, globally, regionally, and within nations. The reading by Susan Zeal is an excellent introduction to some of the different insights from globalisation theories and from family life course theorists. I really recommend you read this reading. One important contribution of family studies to theories of globalisation has been the focus on the importance of emotions. The role of emotions in the experience of migration and of transnational families has been neglected by other social theorists. We've included a couple of articles on this area as it relates very strongly to our work with culturally diverse families, and it links very closely with ideas of trauma and of grief and loss when families migrate across borders, and particularly when families don't choose that migration but have to because of terrible circumstances in their own home country. So how big social changes have affected families is the third theme in this module. Some theorists argue that globalisation has been responsible for these big changes, such as patterns in women's rights, changes in information technology, changes in work, changes in social attitudes. But it seems that local contexts are always important. Listening to Mongrel Nation, it's obvious that the White Australia policy in Australia had profound effect not only on migration patterns, but on the experiences of racism of the different waves of migrants who came to Australia. Another similar policy is the stolen generation in Australia, where children of Aboriginal families were forcibly removed. Some form of this continues to this very day. You might want to think about how policies like this operate in your own country. I know that the United States had very similar policies in relation to the First Nations people there, and India has also had policies around caste and class that have had profound effect on migrants coming to India. The stories and songs from Module 1 give you an idea of the personal experiences of people who were the victims of these policies in Australia. Again, you might find some from your own country. So, how families have changed because of changes in social attitudes and social policies towards women is an important theme in this module, and so is the increasing knowledge about the importance of fathers' relationships with their children. Chapters 5 and 6 from Trask and Hamon and Chapters 2 in Lindsay and Dempsey shed some light on how social change and family change has occurred over time and how that intersects with cultural diversity. In this module, we ask you to examine the relationship between globalisation, social change and family change, and to question and interrogate the ways different theories represent these relationships. The data on national and regional demographics, on migration and on family forms provide some interesting evidence to test these theories against. I encourage you to read widely and to delve deeply into the complexities of the topics in this module. There's one major assessment item for this module. You'll be thrown together with others who have different cultural backgrounds, different professional backgrounds, different learning approaches and skills and strengths. We've created this online experience to be similar to many real-life situations you're going to meet, with a project deadline and time and capacity pressures. These ensure that there is a need to negotiate with your group members and to rely on them, to trust each other, to utilise each other's skills and capacities, and importantly, to work constructively with our own and each other's limitations. You've had a chance to practice the skills in your individual blog, and now we're asking you to collaborate using these skills to produce a group wiki, a group project that you'll do together. Each group member has to engage with an important aspect of the course and to produce an individual contribution, and everyone has to help each other to produce a final product in your group. You'll be given an individual and a group mark that contributes to your overall mark for this assessment item. All of the tools that you need have been set up for you in Blackboard. You'll have a group discussion board for deciding your topic or cultural group or region that your group's going to focus on. The discussion board's also the place for negotiating your roles and discussing any implementation issues that arise. It'll be open to all group members to keep the conversation going for the duration of the module. You'll start off with a real-time group chat with me, the lecturer, and with the other group members. This will be in week 6. We're going to do this through Collaborate. Some of you have already done the tutorial on Collaborate. Others will find it the tutorial that Andrew Yardy has set up for you very useful before you join this chat. I encourage you to have read all of the requirements for the assessment item, including the assessment rubrics, and have a good look at some of the information on the various regions available before you join this first group chat. Then you can have some ideas about the topic that you can bring. You're asked to all contribute one individual page to the group wiki pages, as well as make some contribution to the cover page and to the illustrations. That's the main assignment topic. But finally, you'll write an individual journal about the experience of collaborating, and you'll also write a response to another student's journal entry. This is a challenging and complex exercise, and it's one where emotions are likely to be important, and self-awareness, self-care, and the ability to deal with conflict and recognise your own strengths and the strengths of others, and the limitations of you and others are going to be really important, because we're asking you to produce a quality piece of work and we're asking you to collaborate. to do this. So those skills of collaborating and of production and of meeting deadlines are all going to be highly valued. So these are just the skills you're going to need when you're working with diverse families. I hope you find this module and this group assignment really worthwhile. So get delving into the materials straight away and enjoy Module 2. I'll be back again later for the final lecture in this series, the lecture for Module 3 and 4. Thanks for listening.